Hello, it's Barry again. I thought it was time to show my pretty face to all of you again. So today's video is going to be about part of my past, uh, stories from my past, from my life. Well, I grew up in a place in East Austin called Go Valley. We lived right across from the Go Valley Elementary School. Uh, and at that time, the principal lived in a house there across the street from us. Uh, I was born in Port Arthur, Texas. Not a very pretty place, even though it's right on the coast. It's got a nice beach, brown sand, light brown sand beach. But it's also the home of a lot of oil refineries. And my father worked for the refineries as an electrician. Uh, Previous to that, he's an electrician, and he had gone over to Saudi Arabia to put in electricity at the Saudi oil fields. And he was paid very well for that. And so moved back. My older brother had been born, and everybody told them, all the doctors were saying, you need to take him and put him in the state hospital, which was a place for people that didn't, they had severe disabilities, physical disabilities. So you'd stick him in that place, awful place. And so that's why we moved from Port Arthur when I was still a baby, I think, maybe 1 year old. And we moved to Austin, which is where they had the state hospital and facilities for handling people with mental conditions or physical conditions and stuff. And I'm glad they did. Because even despite Janis Joplin was also born in Port Arthur, she's one of the best and most famous of rock and roll singers. She's amazing a talent. But anyway, we moved to Austin, rented a house in Go Valley. Primarily, most of the people there were families of tradesmen, carpenters and stonemasons and plumbers and electricians. It's a blue-collar kind of area at that time. So we moved there and got settled in. My brother had exhibited, by 3 or 4 years old, he could read. And he was just, mentally was just a genius. But he couldn't get around on his own. He had to be in a wheelchair. And, hey, Pepper, no. Dog. You hear Apollo still barking. Apollo! But we love him though. Uh, so I I was just a little toddler then. Uh, and but my mother said to us to me that I need to take care of my older brother, you know, as I was getting up, you know, by 2 or 3 years old. And so as I got older, uh, my brother, the principal knew my brother, and he saw how intelligent this kid is, despite his physical disabilities. And he said, no, he can go to school right here. And so they enrolled in there. Uh, the principal had one son, and there had been an older daughter, but she died from, I think, smallpox. This was before they had the vaccines. Other people in my neighborhood, another kid was crippled by polio. He wore a knee brace on his leg, and he would hobble around. He'd even get up and play football with us. Good kid, and trying to overcome his disability. Apollo! No! Reason why there's somebody over there by the farm just pulled in, so he has to make himself known. Anyway, so vaccines are important. They work. Get one if you haven't. I also had another friend down at the end of the Go Valley Avenue. There was a big mansion, and it was the Howard Mansion, and one of his sons was my age, and we got along real good. He had two sisters. The older sister got smallpox, I think it was, and died. And the younger one, who was about my age, she and the name escapes me right now. But I used to go over there and wander around with them, looking at, because they had these big koi ponds full of koi fish. Of course, they didn't call them that. We just called them goldfish. And he was a pretty nice guy. We were friends up until the time we moved. And as I understand it, they sold their property. Well, they kept the property, but mostly just as a nursery. Because that's what they operated. They owned one of the largest nurseries in Austin. But he was a nice guy. He was a short kid. But he was a good friend of mine. Another guy, now he was stout, muscles bulging all over the place. I made sure that I stayed on his good side. I never had a fight with him. his name was Jesse Woods. And I learned later, I mean, when I was an adult, uh, Jesse was considered the toughest guy in Austin. And he would fight you anytime at the drop of a hat, you know. Uh, I saw him one time, but I wasn't sure if it was him or not, and I didn't say anything later on. But he worked for the city in some capacity. At that time, I was working for the city too. But it's not beer, not bourbon, it's iced tea. Very special blend. That's healthy. Uh, so, in that small community, there were people that suffered from the various the childhood diseases that were around at that time. Thank God the polio vaccine came available, and my parents made sure I got all the vaccines that were coming out at that time. So they do work. They've saved millions of lives, and polio was not something to just put off. It was a horrible, horrible disease that affected children primarily. And Apollo! Person standing across the street. He just wants to bark. And, yeah, he wants to bark. They come over here, give you some petting. So that's why I say I've experienced that, the effects of vaccines. And I've had a lot of the childhood diseases, measles, which is horrible, horrible, and whooping cough, chicken pox, diphtheria, I think that's what it's called. But we're in a pandemic now, and people need to wake up, start trusting in science, and let's end this stuff. And we're not going to end it if, you know, half the people are unvaccinated. It's just going to keep on going, keep on going. Natural immunity is just a fallacy, an outright lie. And so I was like a Tom Sawyer when I was young. I ran around barefoot everywhere. Everywhere I'd go, I wouldn't wear any shoes. My mother did not like that. And it caused me some pain too, because one time I was jumping over, it had rained, and I was jumping over a puddle and I landed on a bee and it stung me. So, and another time I was jumping off this little culvert above the ditch, and I landed on some glass, and it was really hard getting that glass out. So we've had these things. These are what made me who I am. Helps me to grow up. My brother, of course, went to the University of Texas, and I followed him. after I got out of the Navy. Uh, we used to have professors come over to the house just to talk, sit and talk about whatever with my brother. And my brother always shut the door so I couldn't interfere or make a fool out of myself for his professors. And went on and became a professor himself at Boston University when he passed away. But it was a good life. I had lots of kids. It was easy to get together and play a football or baseball. Not very much in basketball at that time. Football and baseball were the main things uh, in that period of time. Basketball became more famous later on. Uh, so that's about it. As you can see, it's a windy day. It's kind of cool out here, but not cool enough for me to have to put on my jacket. Yesterday, I had to put on my jacket as I came out here. But, no rain. We got just a sprinkle, I think, the other night. So still had to keep watering my plants. And so I hope you enjoyed this and a little bit of stories, and part of my life. And I've had a pretty interesting life, and I wouldn't trade it. Well, maybe I would. I wouldn't mind having been born to the Kennedys. But they assassinated. I'm still alive, so I guess that was pretty good with who I came from. And Brookshires have been in Texas since 1835, when Nathan Brookshire moved to a spot north of Houston, and had a store and a stagecoach stop. And I think he fought in the Texas-Mexico Revolution, and American, his father, or maybe grandfather, fought in the American Revolution. Well, that's about it. I've talked long enough. And so y'all take care, stay safe, get your vaccines, and take care of your family and your pets. And we'll see you again soon. Got an ant walked right across the screen. All right.